Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about Ansible Handlers. This is our video number 6 on our series on Ansible for beginners. And so far we have discussed about how to set up Ansible on your local machine for practicing, Ansible playbook, variables, modules, etc. So if you want to check out those videos, you can go to my YouTube channel and look for a playlist about Ansible. In today's video, I'm going to talk about these special tasks that are called Ansible Handlers, and we'll talk about how to notify them, how to call them, how to use them with certain hands-on demos. And then we'll also talk about how to name your handlers and how we can control handlers, when to call the handlers within our playbooks. So briefly, theoretically speaking, if we talk about Ansible handlers, they are simple Ansible tasks like any other task, right? So whatever we can do with normal tasks, we can achieve with handlers, but they are only triggered when there is an event notification, right? So we can run handlers to notify or run those special tasks only when changes is made in the machine. For example, if you're restarting Apache, on the restart, you also do certain other thing like sending a notification to MS Team channel, right? So on the restart, you can call a handler that will send that notification for you. But the good thing is that if Apache is already running, your notification will not be sent. So that way, this is idempotent, like I have already mentioned within Ansible. Most of the modules are. So like any other task, they are defined within the playbook and gets executed when notified. So for example, the use or why would we need Ansible, right? Ansible handlers. So if you consider a scenario where you're running Ansible to install Apache on 100 servers, right? And on every installation, you want to send a notification or an email to a team that, hey, Apache version XYZ has been installed on this machine. Now imagine that you have 100 machines that you want to ensure that Apache latest version is installed. You don't know on how many of them Apache is already installed, and on how many of them you will be installing Apache, or on how many of them you would be updating Apache from an existing version to the newer version. So in those scenarios, you have two options. One is that you write a very complicated playbook where you first check Apache is installed, yes, no, based on register that. Second thing could be then based on the result. If Apache is not installed, you install Apache. If Apache is already installed, you upgrade Apache, but is running on an older version, you upgrade it. Or if Apache is already installed with latest version, you don't do anything. And then after all these events, you then send an email. So this becomes very complicated, difficult to achieve. What you can simply do is create an event handler for sending an email. And if Apache is already installed and there is no change in the playbook, that event handler will not be called and you won't get the email. All right. So this is a very crude example of where Ansible handlers can be used. There are tons of other examples. So let's go to the hands-on demo. Let me start my machine. So I'm running Ansible core on a Docker image with a Docker desktop on my machine. But you can also, if you want, run it on any Ansible machine using WSL, like I've already created a video on that. So these are the YAML files that I've already created for today's demo. If I go back to the PowerPoint presentation, the first thing we want to talk about is how do we start using handlers, right? Although they are simple tasks like any other task within Ansible, but how do we use that? So let me open my VS Code, and this is an handler example. First of all, let me show you that. So for example, we are running Apache installation like I was mentioning earlier on web servers, and we want to install it on port 80, maximum clients 200. These settings we want to set up right now. So the task would be generally that, okay, we want to ensure that Apache is installed. If Apache is installed, that's okay, we don't want to do anything. But if we are updating httpd conf file, we want to restart Apache, and then after that we want to ensure that Apache is running. So this is a very simple example. So in this case, what would happen that whenever we write, and we won't even need this, so I'll just remove this. So now consider this, that we want to ensure Apache is installed, and if we are changing httpd conf file on the remote server, then only we want to restart Apache. So what will happen in this case, generally this is how we call the handlers. So you write your playbook name, the host where you want to run the play against, right? These are the variables. I've already talked about these in previous videos. Remote users, and then we start writing the tasks. Just after the task, similar to the tasks, you can define handlers. So this is an example of writing handler within a single playbook, right? And from within the task, these handlers are called or notified. So for example, if you see here, when we are writing httpd conf file or updating the httpd conf file, you would notice at the end of this task, there is a notify key, which basically would call a handler called restart Apache. So what Ansible will do whenever this task gets executed, after this task gets executed, if there is any change done by this task, the notify will notify this restart Apache handler, and whatever the task is defined under the restart Apache handler will be executed. So in this case, let's say if Apache is already installed, this task will get skipped. But if let's say HTTPD file on the remote host doesn't match with our configuration, then obviously this task will get changed, and this will call the restart Apache handler. Whereas if the remote server httpd conf file already has the content that we want it to be, in that case Apache will not be, the notify will not happen and handler will not be called. So this makes our life easier. Otherwise, what we would have done is we would have checked if the file on the remote server got changed or not. So we would have registered the value of this task somewhere, and then based on the stdout.change true or false, we would have restarted the Apache. So this is an example of handler within a playbook. Okay, now let's move to the demo. And the first demo I wanted to show you is how do I call an handler. So like I mentioned earlier, you just basically create your normal tasks, and within the task you can notify the handler, and that handler will get executed if there is any change in your task, right? So for example, in this demo, I'm creating a file called samplefile.txt with permission 755. And on the creation of this task, completion of this task, I want to notify a handler which is called change file permission. So when this task get executed, if this files get created, then this handler will be called. So let's see how it happens. So what I'll do is I will just run Ansible playbook, and then we'll have handler demo.yaml. I think that was the file name. And if I call it, this playbook is creating a task. So if you see, the color got changed, and that means the handler got called, which was to change the file permission, and that also got executed. So if I do ls-la here right now, you see my file permission is not 755, which was originally set up in my task, but it is now 644 because that's what I was doing in my handler. Now, interestingly, if you notice, if I rerun this playbook, the handler will not be called. If you see here, in this case, it got called, because the reason why it got called again is because in my task, I'm saying my permission needs to be 755. When Ansible task was running, that permission was 644. So it again changed it to 755. But that meant that the task was changed. So handler was notified and file got changed back to 644. Now, if I remove this, so I don't care about the permission right now. And if I run it again, this time handler will not be called. Because this time what happened, I'm simply saying file, I just want to create file, I don't care about the permission. So in this case, what happened, this file got created, but since there was no change, the handler did not get executed, right? If I just do ls-la, the file permission, although is 644, but that's from the previous run. And if I, for example, do like this to this file, so in this case, what happened, the file permission is now changed. Even now, if I run my playbook again, you would notice that handler will not be called. The reason why again is simple, because the file already existed. In my task, I don't care about the file permission. And if I do ls-ltr again you would see the file permission is 755. So this is one example of calling a handler and how it relates to the change. So it only gets called when there is a change, and then this notification will be sent to the handler. Second example, how do we call multiple handlers? So if you see in the same playbook, if we see here, I'm now calling two handlers. I'm notifying two handlers. One is called change file permission and the second is echo a message. So in this case, what's happening? I'm creating a file and I'm saying I want to change the file permission to 644 and then echo a message. So if I simply rerun this playbook with demo 1, you would notice that now I'm creating a file, but my file permission already matches 755. So let me just remove this so that my file permissions are, let me do 775. So I want file permission to be 775. That would mean that the file that we already have won't match this, and Ansible will change it and the handler should get executed. So now file got changed because we wanted to create a file with different permission. And then what happened after this? Handler got called. So change file permission handler got called and the file message has been changed. The second echo a message handler got called, right? So if I rerun it again, it will again get called because my file permissions are different from what are there right now on the server. I'm changing it to 775 here, but the handler will change it back to 0644. So if you go back here, see the handler got called again. If I remove the permission condition here from the copy module, if I rerun the playbook, the handler will not be called because right now I am only caring about the file, not about the handlers. So this is an example of calling multiple handlers with same playbook. Okay, so now let's see how we can decouple the handlers with their names. So if we see here back to the topics that we want to talk about today, the second is naming convention. So right now in this demo, what we have noticed is that whenever we wanted to call our handlers, we had to give their names. So for example, here the handler was called change file permission. So in the notify, we had to give the full name, and then second was echo a message. So this is one way of naming your handler, where you call your handler by the name. The second method is you can use a keyword called listen. So this is an example of using a listen keyword to execute your handlers. So in this case, we are using the same example. What we are saying is we want to create a file called samplefile.txt with permission 755. But when this file gets created, I want to notify this post file creation. Now in this case, what's happening? I want to notify all the handlers which are listening to this keyword. So this is little different from the one that we were looking at earlier. Here, if I wanted to notify multiple handlers, I had to give their names. This is opposite. If here what I'm saying is notify all the handlers that are listening to this keyword. So in this case, I just recreated the same playbook. In the handlers, I added a new key which is called listen, and the value would be the value that I want to listen for that particular handler. So in this case, I am listening to the same key with these same values with these handlers. So I'm notifying this, and then if I run this called demo 2, in this case also, both of the handlers got executed. Although in this case, I did not specify the handler names under the notify for the actual task. So this is another way of calling your handler by using the listen keyword. Let's quickly move to the third demo, which is on how do we control the handlers, right? So generally, whenever you are running a handler, and let me go to 3.1 here, which is the third demo. So if you notice here, I am running this task, creating a file, and then I have a second task, which is basically I'm saying pause for the 5 seconds. This is just for demo purpose, right? So when this task get created, this is calling two handlers, and then the second task will get executed. So generally by default within Ansible, the handler is only called when the playbook is finished. So let me give you that as a demo. So if I run, for example, 3.1 here, you would notice that file gets created. The next task first get executed, which was pausing for the 5 seconds. And then after this task, the handler got executed, which were actually called by the create a file task, right? So this is the default behavior. Now, how do we change it? So let's say I want to call the handler before this. pause for 5-second task. In this case, we can use a module called meta module within Ansible. So a meta is a special module that allows you to change the behavior of Ansible core. So in this case, what we can do is we can use Ansible built-in meta module with flush handler keyword. So what did we change? So if you see in 3.1, we had these two tasks. Now what we have done is we have introduced an additional task between these two tasks, which is to execute a handler immediately. And what we did, we used a module called Ansible built-in meta with the flush handler keyword. So what this would do is call or execute all the handlers that have been notified up until this point. So there could be 10 a task that you have already executed up until this point. All of them, whatever the handlers have been notified up until this point, will get executed. So let me show that to you. So now we are running handler2 3.2.yaml, and now this is complete. So here you would notice we created a file, and after that execute all handler immediately kicked in, which executed all the handlers, which in our case were two handlers, changing the file permission back to 644 and echoing a message. And then the next task got executed. So this way you can see that we can control when to execute an handler. We can immediately execute an handler after the task, or we can wait all the way till the end, and then all the handlers will get executed, which is the default behavior for Ansible. Okay, so the last demo is about controlling the handler using the changed when keyword. So like I was mentioning earlier when we started this video, the notify only happens when the task is changed, right? So for example, in this case, let's go back and change this back to the original file that like I had earlier. So in this case, if this file exists, then the handler will not get executed, right? Because that's the default behavior. Because there was nothing changed, file was already there. See, the file was already there, so nothing got changed, so handler were not executed, right? Now imagine this, that I want to still notify the handler, right? So in that case, and right now if you notice, Ansible considered that nothing was changed on the remote host with the, as you can see, with the green color. But if there is any change, then it has a light yellow color, right? We all know that. This I have already explained in my previous videos. Now there is a keyword called changed when. Let me add it again. See, this overrides the task's normal changed status, right? So right now we were using copy module. Its default changed when status is already defined, and it works well. If you are creating a new file, if there is any change, it would say changed true, otherwise changed false. Now, if in my case, what I'm saying is changed when, I don't know, let's say true, right? So in this case, if I rerun this playbook, although the file already existed, because I used this changed when keyword, the default behavior of this copy module changed. And now I've changed or told Ansible that consider this task changed when the value comes back as true. And in that, let me just do like this, it doesn't matter, it's same thing. But what happened now, because although the task is same, file was already there, file did not change, handlers got executed because I changed the way Ansible interprets this task's status. So I told Ansible, I made Ansible to think that there was some change introduced by this module, and this triggered this notify section, which again triggered the handlers which were listening to that notify keyword. Okay, that's it for this short video. I hope you liked it. Please consider subscribing and liking my channel. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.